How better go, how better go there, how better go there, how better go where, how better go here, better go here, how better now, better go.
Deed in lieu of foreclosure, part 1. Welcome back. Now, this is going to be a 2-part episode, and you're watching part 1. Now, this episode is a discussion about deed in lieu of foreclosure. Now, I'm Ted Thomas. I've been involved in distressed real estate for a number of decades, more than 30 years. My specialty is tax defaulted property, tax liens, and tax defaulted property. And these episodes will come from that perspective. Now, this episode is structured with many interesting facts, which I'm going to give you ahead of time so that you can be thinking about those while I'm giving the episode. So I've done that just to give you some background. Now, it's not going to follow an exact perfect sequence, but we want to end up, when I finish this episode, with you having a basic understanding of deed in foreclosure. So to start with, I'm not an attorney at law, and I'm not a real estate broker, and I'm not a financial advisor. Basically, I'm an author and a guide, and I teach people how to do tax lien and tax defaulted properties. As I said, what we're going to do is we're going to weave some facts into this particular episode, and I think you'll get a lot of learning out of it. So let me give you some of those facts to start out with. They're not something you want to memorize right now, but you want to kind of get the idea. So a deed in lieu of foreclosure basically means the borrower and the lender have reached some kind of a mutual understanding that the borrower is not going to be able to make any more payments, and the property which the lender has a loan on, that property, the lender is willing to accept the property in return. In other words, the lender will take their collateral to satisfy the loan. So that's a fact you want to keep in the back of your mind. Now, item number 2 is this is not a Christmas holiday or a big gift for the person losing the property, getting a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and it's not a big gift for the lender, but it's basically a compromise. So a foreclosure is going to stay on the borrower's record, could be as long as 7 years when they lose a property, even though there's been a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So this is going to be extremely difficult for both parties because someone's going to lose a property. It's not going to be much easier for the lender because what happens with them? They're now straddled with that property, and it might be less than perfect. And what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to try to sell it to mitigate, in other words, cut their losses, all right? Item 3, deed in lieu of foreclosure releases, in other words, cancels the loan. All right, so that's going to make both parties a lot happier because it's going to end contested situation that they have. The client owner of the property will turn the deed over to satisfy the loan, which is the collateral for the loan. All right, now if there's number 4, if there's any other obligations on this property, for example, like a judgment lien or a tax judgment, and that's going to make this whole thing complicated because the lender is willing to talk about their loan, but they can't talk about other loans. So they can't satisfy other loans. So the lender that's talking about deed in lieu of foreclosure, if there's other liens, that might just cancel the whole problem out. So whoever's trying to get the deed in foreclosure, a deed in lieu of foreclosure, might have to figure out a way to get rid of those other liens if they want to get rid of this one. The point is, I'm saying this is not going to be easy. It's going to be a step-by-step process. Will you need an attorney? Will you need proper advice? Absolutely. I'm not that person. I'm just explaining it so you have some basic idea. Now, there's a basic 800-pound gorilla sitting on top of this whole thing. And what is that 800-pound gorilla that's sitting in the room? I'll tell you what it is. When a lender forecloses on a property, they are basically when you do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, what they're going to do is they're going to forgive a loan. So if a lender forgives the loan, the IRS deems that to be income. Okay, the IRS considers forgiveness as income. All right, that means you're going to have to pay taxes on it. All right, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a tax expert. I'm not a CPA or any of those things. I'm just kind of giving you some basic things to think about while we talk about deed in lieu of foreclosure. You see those little white circles? That's how many auctions are taking place within that state in the next 90 days. This calendar updates every single day. I'm here today to show you how to make money. To do that, I'm going to show you briefly that there are thousands of tax defaulted real estate properties across the 3,000 plus counties in the United States. This is quite interesting. You're looking at the Ted Thomas Magic Interactive Map and Auction Calendar. It changes every day. Now, I created the calendar and the map so I would know how many auctions are taking place every day in the United States. Now I can show the little guy how to make money. Most importantly, I created this system so I could have an auction list for each auction 24/7. All right, now a lot of people understand that there's a significant amount of confusion. I hope I'm starting to clear it up, and that's my only intent here, is to start to educate you so that you understand deed in lieu of foreclosure means you need an attorney, you need someone to really help you out. All right, I'm going to try to clear up some of the confusion, so I'll start that by telling you this is a voluntary act on behalf of the property owner. All right, a foreclosure is not a voluntary act. A foreclosure action means the bank has an attorney. The attorney is aggressively going after the collateral, which is the loan for their money. They want their collateral back so they can stop losing money. So this episode is about on deed in lieu of foreclosure. So some of the things you need to know are what I already talked about. The process is the lender believes that a deed in foreclosure will benefit the lender, and of course the property owner, the borrower, believes that this is going to help them. So this should work out, and if it doesn't get any more complex than that lender and the borrower, it probably will get worked out. But a deed in foreclosure makes both parties somewhat happy, but it's not a vacation or a big gift, that's for sure. All right, now the real estate foreclosure process has been around for hundreds of years. There's many kind of lenders. There's private lenders, there's bank lenders, there's institutional lenders. They're all going to approach this in a different way. A lot of them wouldn't even dream about a deed in lieu of foreclosure. But if you can do that, you're going to get this loan off your back and you're going to be able to start recovering. So foreclosure is nothing more than the consequence of a borrower not paying their installment payments. So the borrower didn't pay, now the lender is coming after them. If it's a mortgage, it's a lawsuit. It's definitely a lawsuit. That means your attorney's going to sue. It's going to have to go in front of a judge. It's going to take 3 to 6 months to a year. It's going to cost a lot of money. I'm going to tell you, this is an expensive situation. So a mortgage or a deed of trust can be worked on for deed in lieu of foreclosure. I'm not going to go into deed of trust, but it's going to be the same kind of situation. So the lender has funded a loan. All right, when they fund a loan, what they do is they have you sign a mortgage. When you sign a mortgage, you sign a pledge that you're committing the property back to that lender. Now the lender wants it, but a lot of people want to stay in the house. So you can just imagine how much agitation and how much controversy is going to take place. The lender just wants back the collateral for the loan that they lent. It was pledged to them. They now want it back. All right. That can turn into a really wicked controversy and take a long time. So that's where deed in lieu of foreclosure comes in. They just want their security interest back. Why do they want it back? The lender wants to sell the property, get some money, and pay off that loan. All right, so banks are going to hire attorneys, legal people to do that. All right, so let's review. In the event the bank and the lender is not able to collect their installments, this is a default. Once the property goes into default, the lender is going to turn it over to the attorney, okay? So the attorney or legal firm is going to start a lawsuit. All right, now, if there's no chance of ever making the payment, some borrowers will approach the lender and say, will you take a deed in lieu of the foreclosure? It's a way to eliminate the liability that you have if the lender will accept that as satisfaction. All right, so is this a complicated process? It can take weeks, months, whatever. Am I qualified to help you with that? No, I'm just giving you the basics of it. You need an attorney. You need someone to guide you through this process because there's so much money involved. Okay, so the lender doesn't have any choice. If they want to get recover their collateral, they're going to have to go ahead and sue you in the court under a mortgage. So they're going to do that. All right, you don't want all that to happen. If you can do a deed in lieu, it probably is going to be to your benefit. Okay, it's a sticky, ugly process. It's sticky, ugly process. I'm not giving you legal advice, but I am going to tell you there's a lot of attorneys going to have to get paid before this thing gets done. But you need to get professional advice on doing this. All right, deed in lieu of foreclosure is not a pleasant experience. All right, so Mr. and Mrs. X can't make their payment. Lender has no choice. They have to start a foreclosure process. All right, As I say, it's going to be messy and nasty. Can it take weeks? Yes. Is it expensive? Yes. The credit's going to be destroyed. Don't be surprised if the marriage is destroyed, and don't be surprised if you've made a lot of bad decisions on the way. But this is one way people try to get things settled. They use a deed in lieu of foreclosure. Now, I'm going to run out of time, so I want to do a couple of things. Number one, I do a lot of answers of questions for people that have YouTube videos. So what I do, when they watch a YouTube video, they send a question, I'm happy to answer those questions. The biggest question that I get, or the question that's asked the most, people ask me, they say, how do I find properties close to me? So what I did to answer that question, I created an interactive map and auction calendar. All right, there's a sample of that in front of you now. And from that sample, you can see that there's got a mouse and it's over the state. All right, automatically it'll just pop up and show you how many auctions are going to take place in that state over the next 60 to 90 days. Now, if you click the mouse, what's going to happen is going to take you to a county, and then you can go to an auction list. All right, if you'd like to have a sample auction list, just register below me. All right, now before I leave you, I want to give you two things to think about. Number one, if you're going to be an auction buyer, big mistake number one is people go to auctions, buy properties, and they haven't looked at the property. How do you know there wasn't a hurricane? How do you know there wasn't a fire? How do you know it's not next to a chicken farm or a pig farm? How do you know there hasn't been some damage or wind damage or whatever? All right, you don't know if you haven't looked at the property. So number one, always look on the property. You have to have boots on the ground. Number two big mistake, that's the one that's just as bad. People don't know when to stop bidding. Well, when you're looking at the property, figure out how you're going to sell it. Figure out a good selling price for it, because you don't want to bid too high. People that don't look at properties bid too high, and guess what happens? Well, they're not going to be able to sell it later. I'm Ted Thomas. I'll see you in the next video. Folks, this was a 2-part video, so go to part 2 right now. Don't forget, request your free auction list right below me.